Well, hello and welcome to today's episode of the Power of Your Mind podcast. You are listening to episode number 244. I'm Victoria Gallagher, Law of Attraction hypnotist and #1 best-selling author of Practical Law of Attraction, Align Yourself with the Manifesting Conditions and Successfully Attract Your Desires. And I'm also the founder of HipTalk.com, HypnoCloud apps, which gives you access to over 500 hypnosis recordings right in the palm of your hand. So be sure to download that app from the app stores. And today I have a very special guest back with me, returning on the Power of Your Mind podcast, Ariel Garten. Ariel Garten is probably one of the most interesting people you're ever going to meet. She is a psychotherapist, a neuroscientist, a mom, former fashion designer, and the co-founder and visionary of an amazing and highly successful tech startup called Muse. Muse tracks your brain during meditation to give you real-time feedback on your meditation, guiding you into the zone and solving the problem that most people have when starting a meditation practice, which is, do I really know if I'm meditating? Muse lets you know if you're doing it right. When Ariel is not reading brains, literally, or investing in, inspiring, and advising other startups and women in business, you can find her on stages across the world and featured on CNN, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, etc. She inspires people to understand that they can accomplish anything they want by learning what goes on in their mind. Ariel is also the co-host of the Untangle podcast, and she can be found on Facebook/Choose Muse, Twitter Choose Muse, and Instagram Choose Muse. And today, Ariel is going to be sharing some of her insights on how the brain functions during sleep and how you can hack your sleep. So welcome back to the show, Ariel.
Thank you, Victoria. Hello. It is such a joy and pleasure to be here today.
Hello, hello. Yes, it is. It's great to see you again. Last time I had you on the show, I had actually it was really kind of like a law of attraction thing, because I had been using your product for, I don't know, about a year or so. I honestly have fell off track with using it. So I'm just going to be honest about that.
It's
But,
okay.
I actually have been thinking lately about getting back into it again. So maybe you can, share some of the reasons why I might want to, get back into it, because, you know, to be perfectly honest with you, I mean, I meditate every single day. And even as long as I have been meditating and how frequently, I still have those, kind of where I've dozed off or I've like drifted off, and Muse helps you with all of that, right? It kind of helps you to really train your brain to stay in your meditation.
Yes, it does. And so how Muse works is it's a slim little, actually, let me grab a Muse one second.
Sure.
I always have a Muse not very far from me. Just one moment. This is edited, right? Victoria, we edit this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we can. Absolutely.
We're going to do a little magic edit here. The mattress that I had slipped off
Let's see.
to
Okay.
transform it back into my office. Just
I'm going to do a little clap here so we know where to come in. Okay.
So this is the Muse. This is Muse, the brain sensing headband that helps you meditate. And it slips on just like a pair of glasses like this. There's sensors on the forehead that track your brain activity during meditation. And it gives you real-time feedback during your meditation to know when you're focused and when your mind is wandering. Because as you said, as a beginner meditator, you sit down and you're like, what's supposed to be going on in my mind? Am I doing this right? And Muse lets you know. You actually hear a soundtrack that shows you that you're focused or that your mind has wandered. And then as an expert meditator, we still have those moments where our mind is wandering. And we're like, oh, right, back to meditating. And it's like 3 minutes. And then you're like, oh, I was thinking about my son's issue that he had at school. And right, back to meditating. So with Muse, you instantly know that your mind has wandered. You're cued, the sound gets louder. And then it's your job to say, oh, right, the sound got louder, back to meditating. And it makes you very, very acutely aware of the process of your mind. It really builds your ability to have metacognition, to observe what goes on in your mind even more efficiently, and be able to really train that muscle of attention to get right back into your practice.
That is amazing. And I would imagine, and you're a neuroscientist, so you know how the brain is wired, and how when you create like a habit, it creates those new neural pathways. So is that kind of also what's happening as well? Are you creating more neural pathways to help you to, when it knows, okay, this is time to meditate and we're going to stay focused, rather than wander off? Is it going to kind of train it to do that?
Exactly. It's neurofeedback. So as soon as you hear the sound that your mind has wandered, and then you hear the sound get quiet when you're focusing, that becomes a reward for the brain to say, yep, that's the thing you should be doing. And then when you
Ah,
maintain your focus for 5 seconds or more, you'll hear the little chirping of a bird, which is very rewarding. So that little chirp is actually a signal to your brain that says, ding, yep, you did the right thing, do that again. And so it hastens the process of neuronal wiring to be reinforced to stay in that state.
I love it. That's amazing. Now you had Muse 1, which I was using before, and now you have Muse 2. So tell us a little bit about this new, what's the difference between Muse 1 and Muse 2?
Sure. So Muse One actually came out in 2014. So we've had a lot of years to work on and build the technology, and it's now used, widely across the world. If you're using Muse 2, you're going to get the same neurofeedback that I just described with Muse 1. Plus, there's an additional sensor on it, a PPG sensor that tracks your heart rate. So you can do meditation experiences where you're actually listening to the sound of your heart, like the beating of a drum, heart meditation. So you're actually able
Oh,
to tap in and listen to your heart. And then you start to listen for when it's rising and falling, when it's increasing, when it's decreasing. So this tunes your interoception, your ability to sensibly understand your internal state. And there's research that shows that those who have better interoception actually have less stress.
wow. That's incredible. That is incredible.
And then,
Um, Go ahead.
yeah, so once you know how your heart rate is doing, we also have a sensor that can track your breath. It's a combination of heart and movement, actually is able to track your breath. So then we have breath meditations that guide you through different styles of meditation to increase your energy, to decrease your breathing, to decrease your energy as you need to focus. So there's this fascinating relationship between the heart and the breath. When you breathe in, your heart rate increases. And when you breathe out, your heart rate decreases.
Oh.
So that's why in meditation, we often spend extended times in long exhales, because as we do that, our heart rate is decreasing and decreasing and decreasing. And that then sends a signal to your parasympathetic nervous system to even further relax because, hey, our heart rate is going down. Everything must be fine. Let's slow down even more. And so in this cycle, you can actually see how your heart is doing. You can increase your heart coherence, your basically difference between your highest heartbeat and your lowest heartbeat, which is your HRV, your heart rate variability. And you can really begin to work with your physiology in new ways to really hone in on yourself and your relaxation.
That is amazing. And then, so does it also, because I noticed that, do you sleep with this? Is this something that you also sleep with now?
So we have the newest band. This is Muse S, S for soft and S for sleep. So it's the
Ah,
same EEG technology, sensors on the forehead and behind the ears, but in a soft form factor. So when we talked to people about how they were using their Muse, it turns out that more than half of them were using it in the evening and often to help them fall asleep. And they would report that they'd fall asleep faster, that they'd stay asleep in ways that felt better. by using their Muse to meditate. And so we created this purpose-built device, Muse S, which you can wear falling asleep. And then we also created beautiful biofeedback interventions called the digital sleeping pill that can actually help you fall asleep and stay asleep even more effectively. So you're listening to this beautiful guided content, whether it's a meditation, a sleep story, a soundscape. And as you do so, because Muse has EEG sensors on it, it's able to track your state of wakefulness and actually change the content, morph it, quiet it down so that it cues your brain to fall asleep even more effectively.
This is incredible. Wow. This is congratulations on coming up with all that. I mean, it's really incredible. So let's kind of get into the content on, how the brain functions during sleep and how we can hack your sleep. So, you know, before we like even dive into that, like what actually happens to our brains when we're meditating?
Oh, sure. So your brain during meditation starts to shift its brainwave activity into greater coherence. So throughout the day, different parts of your brains have different amounts of brainwave activity. It's very fluid. So you might have high theta in one area, high alpha, high beta, depending on the activity that you're doing. As you move into a meditation practice and you close your eyes and you start to breathe deeply and focus on one thing, you begin to increase the coherence of your brain waves, which means more of the brain waves are moving simultaneously together rather than being in a range of different states. You start to see a decrease of brainwave activity into the alpha range. You see an increase in the amount of alpha activity, really coming from the back of the head primarily first, and then moving throughout the head. And then as you drop deeper into meditation, you can start to see an increase in delta activity, coherence between the alpha and the theta, and a host of, very particular changes. So this is interesting when we get to sleep because we can talk about how it's going to be different.
Yes.
What you also see in meditation is an increase in parts of the brain. So some parts of the brain shut down, like your amygdala tends to decrease its activity. And in long-term meditators, you see actually a decrease in the amygdala's activity that is persistent throughout the day. And the amygdala is the part of our body and brain associated with our fear response. What you can also see in some longer term meditators is an increase in your prefrontal cortex thickness. So the prefrontal cortex is the part of our brain associated with thinking, planning, higher order processing, attention, inhibition, reason. And so in a long-term meditator, what you tend to see is an increase in prefrontal cortex function with a decrease in amygdalic function. So it's basically like the prefrontal cortex is your parent and the amygdala is the child, the little child who's afraid of the shadow on the wall. And as you go through a long-term meditation practice, the parent is able to more efficiently and effectively come in and say, shh, amygdala, it's okay. It's just a shadow on the wall. I'm going to sit here. I can gain perspective. I can look around. I can see all the parts of the story. I can see that they're just a story that you're getting wrapped up in and go, shh, it's okay. And you actually can see an increase in the amount of projections from the prefrontal cortex to the amygdala in some meditators, demonstrating greater regulation.
So that's why if you've been meditating for a long time, you don't really get yourself all hyped up a lot in the middle of chaos. You're kind of, you've literally grown your brain in such a way it's transformed physically so that, you're just able to maintain a little bit more. I mean, you're probably, all of your things are going to kick in if there's a real danger. But if you're, just, the typical things that annoy people, traffic, just some kind of crazy chaos, you're able to just be able to calm yourself much easier than somebody who's not practiced and trained in meditation.
Exactly, because you're getting less activation from that fear center of your brain saying, oh, there's something wrong because there's traffic. you're getting a better ability to actually see the whole scenario, and you're getting the better ability to make wise choices. There's another change that can happen in the brain with meditation practice, and that's a decrease in the activation of your internal dialogue. So there's a part of your brain that moves from your parietal cortex to your prefrontal cortex, and it is responsible for your inner dialogue. It's called the default mode network, and it gives you that sort of chatter that goes on in your brain. So if you stick somebody in an MRI machine and you say, think about nothing, you'll see a decreased inactivity in a bunch of parts of their brain, but you're still going to see that default mode network lighting up. When you put a long-term meditator in an MRI machine and you say the same thing, you're likely to see a decrease in the activity in that default mode network because their mind is quiet. That internal chatter has quieted down. And, we talk about this like spiritually or metaphorically, we talk about the monkey mind, meditation quiets the monkey mind. Well, it turns out there's actually a neuroscientific correlate to that monkey mind that actually physically gets quieter and gives you the experience of less chatter in your mind. And that is the default mode network.
That is very cool. So you guys can rest assured that, even though it might not seem like things are happening when you're meditating, maybe you're not getting the spiritual experience or whatever it is that you're looking for. I mean, things are happening. Things are changing in your brain that are benefiting you. And so what would you say are some of those benefits for a person who's a long-term meditator?
So the benefits are quite significant. Starting with the physical ones, in a great study by Dr. Eileen Luders, she demonstrated that long-term meditators have brains that look, on average, 7.5 years younger than non-meditators. So
Wow.
we're talking about actually making real physical change in the brain that can lead you to have a brain that looks significantly younger than you actually are and potentially function significantly better.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. So, I mean, because a lot of times we'll refer to it as exercise for the brain and mind. And so in a way, because exercise helps keep the body younger, the mental exercise is helping to keep your brain younger.
Yes, in essence, younger and potentially with increased function as you age, and certainly with better emotional self-regulation.
And then some of those emotions too, if you think about it, I mean, some of those emotions, the fear, the anxiety that we're not dealing with as often, those can age you.
Absolutely. So cortisol ages your brain and body. So when you have that fear response going, it is taking a real toll on your body if you don't have tools that help you bring that response back down again and reduce your cortisol load. So the hippocampus, which is the part of your brain responsible for learning and memory, actually can decrease over time as a result of cortisol damage. So cortisol decreases your hippocampus. In long-term meditators, what you tend to see is less decrease in your hippocampal size, the part of your brain responsible for learning and memory, likely because there's a protective effect of meditation that is reducing your cortisol levels. So cortisol is not shrinking your brain in the same way.
This is really fascinating. Wow. So you say that you can help listeners to hack their sleep. So can we talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So sleep is another thing that's very important for your brain and important for your brain as you age. So just sort of on the brain age tilt for a second, if you sleep less than 6 hours per night, you've probably lost about 9 points on your IQ in the next morning. That's by a study by Dr. Adrian Owen. He did a great study on sleep and cognition. So clearly, sleep is important. Most of us do not get enough of it, and that's primarily because we don't prioritize it. So sleep begins not just at night when you put your head down on your pillow. Sleep actually begins in the morning when you wake up, which might sound crazy. So diving into the brain for a second and how sleep works in the brain, you have two systems that govern your sleep cycle. You have your melatonin circadian rhythm system and your sleep pressure system. So let's talk about melatonin and circadian rhythm. Some of you probably take melatonin at night to help you sleep. And that's because melatonin is the hormone that signals your brain for sleepiness. It's kind of like the sleep tap.
Mm-hmm.
Melatonin is set by light. So when there's a lot of light, your melatonin is shut off. When it is dark out or begins to become dark, your melatonin tap turns back on again. So in the morning when you wake up, the first thing you want to do is stick some light in your face, turn on the light, stand by the window if you've got one, let the natural sunlight in, because that will turn off your melatonin, making you feel both more alert at that moment and signaling to your brain that 16 hours later, when it's bedtime, your melatonin is going to start up again. So you want to be training your body and mind in a precise rhythm for sleep. You want to be consistent about it every night. In the evening, you can increase your melatonin production by dimming the lights 60 minutes before you intend to be asleep. So if bedtime is 10 o'clock, at 9 o'clock, just go around and dim down all the lights. Because melatonin production back in the old days when we didn't have lights would begin at dusk. And, slowly it would darken. And with that, evening light, our melatonin would begin. And then it was pitch dark and our melatonin would kick in and we'd fall asleep. Now we have to recreate those scenarios for ourselves, whether it's going to be at 10 o'clock at night when you go to bed or 2 a.m, whatever it is, 60 minutes before, dim the lights, prepare your mind.
Wow. Okay. That's really good information. So let's just say you get up at 5 for meditation. It's still dark out, especially this time of year. And so should that be the time though, if you're awake, but you're just meditating? I mean, should you meditate in a lighter room, or should it still be dark? What would you advise there?
So it depends what feels good to you. There's definitely, if you're a morning person and your clock is set to wake up at 5 a.m. and that's when you're awake, throw your lights on. Tell your body that you're awake, especially if your aim is to go to bed at 5 a.m. minus 8 hours. Because your melatonin system will then shut off and then start working again to get you asleep 16 hours later. So 16 plus 8 hours is 24 hours. You're back to 5 a.m.
Right.
So if you want to be awake at 5 a.m., let your body know you're awake because it's going to make it easier to fall asleep. Another fun thing that you can use as a bit of a lever is exercise. So if you exercise early in the morning, that's going to set your sleep cycles to wake up more readily early in the morning, which will then allow you to be sleepier at nighttime. And vice versa. If you find you're waking up too early and you're groggy, at 11 and you still want to be awake, exercise in the evening can push your sleep cycles later. So exercising in the evening means that you'll probably be more alert, you'll fall asleep later, and your body will be ready to wake up later the next day.
That's good to know. I need to push my workout, because lately I've been doing my workout in the evening, but I really, I really know I need to do it in the morning. It's probably it's probably best. So what would you say are some other essential things that we can do to sleep well every night?
So on the subject of light and dark, you want to make sure that your bedroom is nice and dark. If in your bed you have a bed partner, they may be having some habits that are keeping you from sleeping, and now's the time to fix them. Maybe you need to get a new mattress so you don't feel them rolling around. Maybe you want to have separate blankets because when they steal the blanket, it wakes you up, or you're too hot because they're too cold. So, really, really have a hard look at what both of you do. And it's okay. It doesn't mean you don't love them if you're not sleeping next to them, or if you ask them to use some snoring aid. It means both of you are going to be less grumpy the next day and better able to have a relationship.
That definitely makes a lot of sense. Yeah, we've both been guilty of keeping the other awake at night. So, and then I guess the last thing is, in your opinion, how would you suggest that we, overcome anxiety, fear, other things that our brains tell us?
So meditation is, obviously a go-to. As we talked about earlier, the part of your brain, the amygdala, that's responsible for that fear response, responsible for all that emotion that we feel when things are dangerous, can be downregulated by a meditation practice. And so the amygdala is a very helpful part of our brain when it comes to really looking at the dangers that are around us, actual dangers. You're about to have a car accident, or there's a snake over there that might be poisonous, or whatever it is. However, your amygdala also fires around potential dangers, like pictures of snakes when it doesn't need to go, or even just thinking about a snake when there's absolutely no snake in sight. So our amygdala is very inclined to try to help us by overreacting, but in reality, it just gets in our way. In reality, it really just hijacks our logical systems and hijacks our ability to listen to our body. So this is an interesting thing, because in the spiritual world, we often talk about, what does my intuition say? Listen to my body. And often our overactive amygdala is giving us physiological sensations of fear, anxiety, twitters in our stomach, that are not really related to reality. They're not really related to what's going on or what might happen to us, or, who we want to be or what we want to manifest. Instead, it's just a fear response going off, and it throws us off track.
Yeah.
And it's like constant red herrings being thrown at us, like, oh, you need to listen to this thing and this thing and this thing because your body's reacting so strongly. So when you can learn to notice and understand that your body might be responding with anxiety or stressful thoughts, that's not necessarily reality. It's kind of a broken alarm system. And it's kind of like if you lived in an apartment building and the alarm went off one day. Everybody would grab their hat and their coat and they'd run outside, and they'd be like, clearly there's a fire. Like, oh no, there's danger. The next day the alarm went off at the same time. You grab your hat and your coat, you'd run outside, and you'd be like, this is suspicious. And then it went off again and again and again, every single day at the same time. And by day 12, you're like, oh God, it's just that broken alarm again. And you're not paying attention to it. You're not listening to it. You're sitting there making eggs, watching Oprah, doing your work, talking to your kids, like whatever it is. And the sound is annoying, but it doesn't signify danger. And so learning about that shift between our amygdalic response that just drives us to the feeling that there's something wrong, and being able to differentiate that from the sort of deeper inner wisdom that we may have from the information that we're getting, the real information from the world around us, is key in being able to manage our anxiety and our stressful thoughts, and being able to put distance between you and what is simply fear.
That definitely makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because it's in a way, it's like the little boy who cried wolf.
Yes.
Our amygdala just, keeps sending us these messages, but then eventually we just kind of learn to live with it and ignore them. But then we're not listening really to the messages of our intuition that are really trying to guide us, and really trying to get our attention that we need to pay attention to.
Yes, and it's can be very hard to differentiate which is which. And most of us are just caught up in this constant loop of listening to our fears and our worries and feeling them in our body, and then amplifying them in our minds, and then amplifying them in our body. It's like, you're stuck in traffic and you're like, oh no, there's traffic. And you feel like this, rise in your body. And then you have thoughts about it, because we're supposed to think about things that are potentially harmful to us. And then that creates more sensation in our body and more thoughts and more sensation, and it ramps up. And so with the meditation practice, you're able to both learn to observe your thinking, which we were talking about, really look at your thoughts and say, is this true? Is this right? Is this real for me? And calm down the physiology, calm down the amygdala, take deep breaths with extended exhales that slow your body, all of which allow you to get your anxiety system under control and begin to have discernment about the kinds of thoughts and feelings that are just broken alarms, that are just misplaced anxiety, and those that might actually be real and relevant for you in your life.
That makes it. Is there any way to fix those alarms so they're no longer going off, or like, how does that work exactly?
Sure. So one blunt instrument way to fix it is with um, pharmaceuticals like Valium, etc. What those
Mhm.
really do is they're increasing your serotonin, they're down regulating your amygdala, and actually feeding your prefrontal cortex the serotonin it needs to create more logical thinking. So if you ask the question, that's one path. The other is through meditation and relaxation practices that retrain your amygdala. So there's, several parts to the story that need to be retrained. One is the ability to observe your thoughts and observe your feelings and not get caught up in them, not just go like, oh, I'm scared, therefore there's something wrong, but to be able to take a step back and say, okay, I feel there's emotion rising. I see there's a thought in my head. Let's step back and really ask ourselves what's actually going on rather than just jumping into it. And so that's something the meditation practice teaches you deeply. The next piece is to be able to calm your body. So deep breathing, listening to your heart rate, letting it slow down. And that down regulates the cortisol response, down regulates the amygdala. And then there's all sorts of forms of desensitization training where you actually approach the thing that is so scary to you. And
Mhm.
then once you approach it, you realize, oh, it's actually okay. It's like I'm letting a spider crawl on my hand and it hasn't bitten me yet and I haven't died. That's weird. Okay, I guess it's still crawling there. And you might be freaking out, but you're training your body and your mind by your intention to do the thing and saying, actually, this is safe. And when you break through that wall of fear, because so
Mhm.
many times what we're afraid of is just the fear. It's like, oh, I don't want to do public speaking because I'm so afraid that I might screw up. We're just afraid of the fear of it. We're afraid of the feeling. And when you realize that you can have these feelings, that you can have fear rise and fall, that you can have uncomfortable sensation in your body, and you can just sit with it and be with it and watch it rise and watch it fall, that in many, many, many cases actually undermines the seat of the fear in the first place. And you're able to realize, oh, okay, spiders are okay. That's weird. And the next time you'll have a little fear, and then the next time less and less and less. And over time, those fears diminish as you continue to bravely break through them, walk through
Mhm.
them, make friends with them, and discover on the other side there's nothing. And indeed, on the other side of fear, there's generally freedom.
Absolutely. And one of the things that, we do in hypnotherapy is, we actually help people to face a lot of those fears too.
Yes.
Visualization is so powerful for that desensitization process because the subconscious mind doesn't know whether it's real or imagined. And so it's like you've touched that snake or that spider or been on stage, as many times as you present it to your mind. And athletes use that all the time to increase, their athletic abilities and skills. And and the other thing too about that is with the fears. I mean, sometimes you just have to allow yourself to feel
Mhm.
that. And it's a lot of people just like "Oh, I'll wait until I'm not afraid." Well, there may not be a time. You may not you may not get there. And so yeah, it's really important, I think, that we learn how to this, to embrace that feeling and be able to step through that. And it's kind of like the person who's afraid to cry because they feel like they're going to lose control and they're going to cry their head off and they'll never stop. But as soon as you allow yourself just to feel, usually the feeling doesn't last that long.
Yeah. And you're absolutely 100% right. It is the fear of the feeling. It's like, I don't want to feel afraid. So I'm not going to reach out to the spider, because as soon as I start to reach out to the spider, I feel the sensation of fear rising inside of me, and it sucks. And so it's that sensation of fear that pulls you back from the spider. We're talking about benign spiders here, house spiders.
Yeah.
It's a sensation of fear. It's just like, I don't want to feel that, so I don't do the thing. And the way to break through it is to have the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And it can feel awful. It's like, oh my God, like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Everything in my body is screaming, like, don't touch the spider. But it's just a safe spider. It's not
Yeah.
it's a house spider. It's okay.
And it's
And
the
when
same thing with, go ahead.
yeah, no, you go ahead.
It's, it's the same thing with heights. I have a little bit of a, fear of heights, and it's not like it's not like it ever totally goes away, but you learn how to be able to move through it,
Yes.
to be able to, because, I like to hike, and I like to hike to high places, but I don't really like the, the heights, that much. But I like to look out over the horizon. So you've got to sometimes, in order to get to the things that you want to get to in your life, you're going to have to take those risks. And, whether it's, having to deal with spiders or fear of public speaking or whatever it is, usually there's, like you said, the freedom is in facing those fears.
Yeah. And an idea that I love is that the value of doing the thing is greater than the value of holding on to the fear. So for
Ooh.
you, yeah, the value of going on that hike and being able to stand there and see it is greater than the value of just being afraid about it and sitting in your home.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, one last thing about sleep, and then we'll wrap up. But I wanted to ask you, just because
Sorry that my baby's in the background. Can you hear that?
I can't.
Okay,
Yeah, no, we're
cool.
good. We're
So
good.
we'll go on. Yes. One last thing about sleep. Start again.
Yeah, so I am one of those people who tries to get away with as little sleep as possible. And I know I must, I must learn to sleep, because I don't want it to shorten my life. I don't want it to shorten my attention span or my intelligence or my patience, and all. I realize the impact on it, but I want to, just for those of you who are out there like me, who really do try to function on as little sleep as you can possibly get, what what would you say, because I heard you say the 8 hours, and everybody talks about the 8 hours, but is there a minimum amount of sleep that we can get away with?
I love the question. How little can I get away with?
How
So,
little sleep can I get away with?
okay, so the answer is it's different for everybody. So
Okay.
some people genuinely can sleep 6.5 hours. Some people genuinely need to sleep 9 hours, and it
Mhm.
varies from person to person. Often people will be like, oh, yeah, I'm fine on 6 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
Chances are you're not.
Uh-huh.
Chances are, the percentage of the
Probably not.
population who can find the 6 hours is very small.
Yeah.
Um, so one good way to find out is to count your sleep cycles. So when you fall asleep, you go through a cycle of sleep, which begins with stage 1 sleep, in which you're just lightly asleep. You have sleep spindles, K complexes into stage 2. Then you're in stage 3, which is deep sleep. And you
Mhm.
want to have deep sleep for about half of the night, the first half. And then you'll move into REM sleep, and then back up to a brief period of awakening sometimes, and then start the cycle again. Stage 1, stage 2, deep sleep, REM sleep, awakening, stage 1, stage 2. That should happen 4 to 6 times throughout the night. Each of
Ooh.
those cycles are typically 90 minutes.
Mhm.
So, 90 minutes times happening 4 times a night gets you a good night's sleep, or 5 times a night gets you a great night's sleep. If you're somebody who has shorter sleep cycles, and some people do, some people's sleep cycles only 60 minutes,
Mhm.
you could potentially get away with sleeping 6 hours because you've gotten in 6 sleep cycles, and that was awesome. So
Got it.
tracking your sleep is a really effective way to understand, am I getting enough sleep? Am I getting enough of the kinds of sleep I need, the quality of sleep I need? And that tracking element can really help you understand, have I gotten enough sleep? What should I be doing better? And then you can get really kind of precise and fun in hacking that sleep. So for some people, you're going to bed too late, and so you're missing out on REM sleep, sorry, on deep sleep. For other people, you're waking up too early and you're missing out on REM sleep. So if you're used to sleeping till 7 and you decide to wake up at 5 to go to the gym or meditate or whatever, you might have just cut out 2 hours of valuable REM sleep. And so maybe that's not the best choice for you.
And
Maybe there's a different way that you want to structure your day.
got it. And so therein lies another one of the important reasons why we should all get the Muse app, because it'll help you to track your sleep and track your sleep and hack your sleep.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I am definitely interested. And so, for all of our listeners who are also interested, you're offering a special podcast deal that if they apply the code POD10, they're going to get 10% off Muse. And that's off the equipment, but not this. So, there's also a subscription. How does that work?
Yeah, it's a 10% off everything.
Off everything. Okay. So they can use that on the subscription. And you
Yep.
offer various different subscriptions levels like monthly, annual, lifetime, anything like that? Or
Yes, and all that is on the website. So when you buy it as a bundle, it's 10% off everything.
perfect. Okay. And so they can get that at choosemuse.com.
You got it. Choosemuse.com.
Awesome. Okay. Well, you guys take advantage of your Pod 10 and get 10% off Muse. Thank you so much, Ariel, for sharing all of your insights with us about how our brain works and anxiety and sleep and meditation. And, you've just been a wealth of information. And I know our listeners appreciate that. And I definitely do as well. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share. Really appreciated.
You're welcome. And thank you guys for listening and watching the next episode of the Power of Your Mind podcast. And we will see you next week.
And thank you, Victoria, for the work that you do. As we were talking about fear, hypnosis is such an incredible way to be able to overcome your fears and to be able to tap into experiences in the real world just in safety and comfort of your own mind. It's great. I've done a lot of it and I love it.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.